Hey, I'm Alicia, your non-monogamous relationship coach. Welcome to the podcast where my friends and I chat about our relationships, enthusiastic non-monogamy, polyamory, swinging, kink, and our lives. You'll get a candid peek into what makes it worth it to live life outside the box. And in case you're still wondering, nope, we're not monogamous. In this episode of Nope, We're Not Monogamous, I'm chatting with CJ, who shares her experience with non-monogamy in a long-distance relationship. So CJ's sharing how embracing non-monogamy played a pivotal role in their relationship and allowed them to navigate the challenges of being long-distance across two different continents. We're talking about how to navigate non-monogamous dynamics while being miles apart, even thousands of miles apart, enhancing communication skills, cultivating a non-judgmental environment, and understanding the significance of touch and physical connection are key to maintaining intimacy despite the distance. CJ's a sex coach and a pleasure advocate, and she supports people who are looking to explore their desires and expand their pleasure by facilitating their movement away from shame. And she brings 10 years of personal and professional experience in non-monogamy and kink. She loves learning about what turns others on and assisting in their pleasure journeys. We're kind of kindred spirits like that. If you want to take your non-monogamous long-distance relationship to the next level, this episode is a must listen. Before we dive headfirst in today's episode, I've got a little something extra to sprinkle on your podcast experience. If you're yearning for an extra helping of podcast goodness, why not consider taking the plunge and becoming part of our exclusive Patreon family? By joining this crew, you're not just keeping the show's lights on, you're also unlocking a secret treasure chest filled with behind-the-scenes delights and an avalanche of affection from yours truly. And welcome to our newest friend with benefits, Tom. Your support is the icing on my podcast cake today, and I'm truly grateful for it. Enjoy. CJ, Alicia.
I'm so happy to be here.
I am so glad you're here. This is fantastic. What a fun way to begin. And I love leaving things mysterious for people like that.
Yes. Can I just start off by saying your environs, your little area is just very calming and relaxing, and thank you for that. It's beautiful. And your smile is just vibrant, and yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for
I
having me.
appreciate that. This backdrop is to hide all of my mess.
You know that's okay.
Yeah, it's my literal mask.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
We're going to talk about unmasking today, I hope.
Sure. Yeah. Let's talk about all the things. Totally.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's start with nope, we're not monogamous. I would love to hear how non-monogamy manifests in your life.
Wow. Let's put it this way. I wouldn't be in the marriage that I'm in if it weren't for that.
Yeah. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. My husband and I are on our second marriages, and lessons learned, not so much for me, but for him, that things do change. Maybe, he was married in his 20s. And, when I think back to my 20s, it's like, I didn't know who the hell I was. And I'm still figuring that out and exploring, and things change. So one of his requirements was that he was not going to be monogamous anymore. And lucky for me, I was already on that path, and lucky for him too. And it was like, cool. Yep. Sounds good. And so we are recently married as of earlier this year after a 7-year long distance relationship on 2 different continents.
That's amazing.
And if you think about that, like, what are you going to try to be monogamous like that? Like, really? I mean, people do, that's fine, but both of us are very sensory and touch oriented.
Mhm.
And like being without touch, which doesn't necessarily mean intimate sexual touch, is important for us. It's not for everybody, but we needed to have that. And there are other ways of getting it, through cuddles and things like that. I'm also a cuddle um, therapist and provider, a professional cuddler, and a facilitator for group cuddles. And yeah, so it made sense from the beginning. It was like, yep, okay, cool. We have to, not going to be able to visit each other on the weekends.
Uh-huh.
And it was not a problem for me because I had already been exploring that with a previous partner and kind of plugged into a community. So yeah, it's continued, it's going to continue, it's not going away. It's not like, oh, because we were long distance, we're doing this thing. It's like, no, that's just our chosen relationship style.
Mhm. Mhm. So you guys were on two different continents for how long did you say?
7 years.
Holy
And
cow.
that included 28 months of physical separation during our wonderful pandemic because of strict border
Yeah.
closures and controls.
Yeah. Oh my god, you guys must have solid communication.
Mm, we really,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's a testament to that for sure. Thank
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
you.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Wow, that's crazy. So, you said you said that like it was fine for you because you already had community and you're already exploring that. How was it for him?
Oh, he was thrilled.
Fine.
I mean, he's like, it was his requirement. So I think that in terms of us, it's great and our attitudes about it. Now, the execution of that type of
Mhm.
relationship style, particularly with aging, can be, you know, it sounds like a great thing, but it can be an uphill climb. Just
Yeah.
because you say this thing and this is what you want doesn't mean you get everything that you want all the time in terms of like who's available to you and the amount of like energy that needs to go into that relationship. And a lot of what would occur for him was it appeared that the women he was seeing would kind of accept it in the beginning and then not really, like they would kind of fizzle out because they realized like our bond was so tight. It was, even though we're in two separate places, it just, they weren't going to be the primary. And I think that was frustrating for a lot of people. And also that they were kind of dabbling in non-monogamy and it wasn't, they were open to it, but then realized it wasn't for them. So
Yeah, yeah. I hear that a lot where a lot of people are, open up or are open and they start dating and when there are people out there that are dating, they're like, "Yeah, I mean, what's non-monogamy? That's dating." Right? Like that's what that is. Until I find someone that I suddenly become emotionally invested in and now I no longer want that. But a lot of people don't realize that until, like rubber hits the road and they're like, "Oh, now my heart is getting mixed in this and it's no
yeah,
longer a thing I want."
yeah. And at this point for us, we don't really identify as polyamorous,
Mhm.
although I think we both have the capacity for that. It hasn't like, it's hard to really explain how deep our bond is for a multitude of reasons. And I
Mhm.
think for some people, our sort of structure as anchor partners and nesting partners and primary partners, really, because
Mhm.
we are each other's priority
Mhm.
and we are respectful to other people and have an understanding of that might be a struggle for them. But we don't, particularly me, do not have the bandwidth at this time to take on another like deep love relationship.
Mhm.
And that may shift at some point. We're recently married, we're recently together, we're still
Yeah.
like, even though it's been 7 years, we're still in our honeymoon phase in a lot of
Yeah.
ways, and still figuring out how we can open up in all the different ways that we are and really learn about each other. So yeah, it's the execution of this relationship style is complex. And
Yeah.
like I said, just because you say it's a thing doesn't mean it's like all the options are open to you, right?
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
keeps saying, well, I think particularly as an older man. And I'm like, well, really? Like, let's talk about that, because as an older woman, I have opinions about that too. So
Uh-huh.
let's just say for older people in general, it can be, an interesting thing. But of course, being younger would also have its own things. The benefit of being older is that our kids are grown. I mean, we
Uh-huh.
still have one at home, so, but they're mostly grown and on their paths. So that's a wonderful thing because
Yeah.
that opens up a lot of freedom. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Family hours are tough to navigate sometimes. What
Oh,
a solid like self-awareness though to have of like this is what we're available for. This is our bandwidth. This is what we want to prioritize right now, and being able to like share that is so so important.
yeah.
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 I think he's got more energy and more like extroversion tendencies and than I do.
Mhm.
I love to have my alone time. I love to just relish in the quiet. And, I was recently away. And while I was away, I was really thinking about that. Like, this is the first time he's been alone in our home together. And what is that going to look like for him? Well, he scheduled 2 dates. And I was like, great. But for me, I was thinking, like, what would I do? And all I could think of was like, nothing.
Yeah.
I would do nothing. I would be alone. Like, I wouldn't even want to see friends, just sort of like relish and like, ooh, I have it to myself again. Yeah. So different approaches. Yeah.
And I love that because so many people try to approach everything as it has to be equal, to be fair. But like, I don't
Yeah.
want the same thing you want.
Yeah. And that's also just, ooh, hmm. I love that you said that, because that's true. Like, even I think I had used to have some of that.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, that's not fair. Or, well, I have to like make up for, this discrepancy and like, how many people I'm seeing or something. And at some point that just faded away. It's like, that's not really like, that's looking at what's going on from an external viewpoint instead of what are my needs?
Yeah.
What do I want? And I'm learning more and more that we don't often know what we like or what we want or what we need. And it is sort of this like outside version, or like other people's opinions or judgments or what's happening in the world or what we're expected to do, instead of like, hey, wait a second, what do I really want here? What do I
Mm-hmm.
need? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Totally. Totally.
Mm.
I'm curious. I'm curious about having been in this relationship for a really long time and separate and non-monogamous. Like what were the biggest challenges of that?
The initial stages really were the most difficult, the unknown. I was really kind of, cynical in the beginning when we first started talking. I was like, "Oh,
Ah.
really? Like, this is where I'm gonna find this person is on another continent? That's great." And I just had a lot of like, "Ooh, this doesn't sound great." And, a lot of my friends were like, this is not gonna be good for you." And, even though we became very close and spent a lot of time talking and getting to know each other and really going deep over the phone and Skype and stuff, um, I still had some concerns for maybe a year or so of like someone within, geographical proximity could replace me, and
Mhm.
just sort of like that fear, particularly when he would be going out on dates where the person was closer to our age, that made me nervous because, like, a younger person who might wanna have a family or whatever, like, it might just be like an experimentation thing or having some fun, but, like, someone who was closer to my age always was like, oh, like, just nervous, and I learned how to sit with that anxiety
Mm.
and not bring it into his experience and try to sabotage his experience. And I worked it out. And a lot of it had to do with sort of our sexual kink preferences and our bonding
Mhm.
on those things. And I realized that the best way for me to navigate this was to take care of myself and to tell myself it was going to be okay, that I can't control it. And, you know, if he chooses to be with someone else and this ends, that's okay. I'm going to be okay. But the other thing is that I also became, it kind of challenged me to become even better at the things that I knew he loved. And including monogamy, including the ability to
Yeah.
be open and not be jealous
Yeah.
or kind of needy or sabotaging anything. And like I really just I built up my own confidence around that space and just was like, no one else can be like this. And I'm sure that that's not true, but that's what I would tell myself. Like, you are the best at like just letting him be him and letting him do what he needs to do in his explorations. And then by allowing that and giving him that space, what I got back from him was just, it's and still is. It's just such a gift that I've given to both of us, really.
Oh god, I love that so much. So you had said you sat with the anxiety, and this is a thing I talk with so many people about is like acceptance,
Mm,
right? Like acceptance of what is, because it is, and it's like we want to fight, 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 or like we want to jump into action to make things change so we don't have to feel uncomfortable, which just drags that discomfort out so much longer. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
So, like, sitting with the anxiety. So I'm curious, you said you, like, sat with it and, like, you didn't wanna bring that into his experience. This, I think, is the fine line that people struggle with of, how do I share what's happening for me? How do I be open and transparent and honest and talk about how I'm feeling, right? That's one of the things we tell people is, like, talk to your partner about how you're feeling, while also not making every experience that they're having be brought down by my hard feelings.
Yeah.
Whoo, what a like, it's this, like, teeter-totter of, like, so I'm curious, how did you balance that? Did you sit with it while he was out and talk to him later? How
Oh,
did
yeah. Like, I was not that person. And, you know, I have a hard time like understanding people that are like so like they have to stay in touch with the person while they're out with somebody else. There can be some of that and be respectful and things come up, but if it's about like them needing to be part of the date almost is like, or ending the date or whatever, like when are you coming home? That's, I think, like, how can you cope in a different way?
Yeah.
How can you soothe yourself? Right. Um, I think that's something that takes some practice. Yeah, I would just, okay. So I would talk to him about it later
Uh-huh.
and also really be able to try to open up. And there were times when it was a struggle. I was like, maybe I don't want to hear that.
Uh-huh.
And just starting to establish boundaries like, okay, like now I need like a little bit of separation. Like, give me some space here at like afterwards and hearing about how it went. And then eventually, what started happening was because we have a particular type of kinky relationship, I began to eroticize the mm, his experience and really like turn it into a turn on for me, where it's
Mhm.
like it's hard to explain, but like whatever little I would recommend, like whatever little like part of that that feels like maybe there's some eroticism there, like capitalize on that because then it's like it can open up so many things between the two of you potentially, right? And it's like that's one of the benefits I think of all of this is that there's such opportunity for exploring the erotic nature of having different partners and people bringing different things in and like the closeness that it can bring within the existing relationship. Um, I'm happy to talk more about that if you want.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah.
I know
Yeah,
I'm
I
being a bit vague.
I was just gonna say, okay, first of all, there is a little bit of existential kink to it. I've found that when I dig into the sense like what anxiety feels like in my body,
Hmm.
it's very similar to what turn on feels like in my body. And the
Yeah.
difference is what I'm thinking, like what
Mm.
my thought is about it. So there is very much an existential kink happening there where you can take
Mhm.
this sensation in your body and go, okay, this could be a bad thing or it could be a good thing. And how am I thinking about it? What's my mindset about it that can change it? But also, you mentioned your particular kink a couple of times. And so now I have to ask.
Yeah. I mean, well, I don't know if there's a particular one, but I mean, our relationship is a DS where he's the dominant and I'm the submissive. And that's also how we came together, was
Mhm.
both craving that type of relationship style. So, yeah, I mean, part of that, he could technically be the person who's like, well, I'm doing it anyway, and you have to suck it up. But he's not that kind of dominant. He's not that type of person. I wouldn't be with him if he was.
Uh-huh.
He's very respectful and wants to make this a beautiful experience for both of us. And
Love
so
that.
part of that for me is this is can be unusual for some people. I enjoy at times feeling less than.
Hmm.
And I'm not. I do not believe that I am, and I have a very strong sense of self and a pretty unwavering confidence. I have moments just like anybody else, but um, I think because of that, I have a solid base, and then I can play on the edges. So a lot of
Yeah.
what we do is psychological, and I don't know if you've ever heard of a female version of a cuckold, which is
Hmm.
a cuck queen. I've played with that and I actually really enjoy it. And part of my thing is humiliation. And I would just kind of start play with it on my own, in my
Yeah.
own head first. And really kind of feeling like, oh, like, does that feel good to me? And like, how can I turn that into something exciting and
Hmm.
more of a turn on? And yeah, it's pretty solid now.
That's amazing. Oh, I love that. There's something, and I love the way you are talking about it because this is one of those dynamics that has a lot of, I mean, first of all, there's a lot of people that don't even know about it or understand it or know what it is.
Sure.
But then you go a little bit further and it's a dynamic that a lot of people will use as a way of like shaming people,
Of
right?
course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so hearing you talk about it with no shame, just like this is what I'm doing. This is what I enjoy. I love that, which I haven't even asked you about your work, but I know that you work with shame with your clients. And
Mhm.
so just hearing the way that you talk about it is like, oh, look at how embodied that is. Freaking fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah,
recognizing that. It's,
absolutely.
yeah. I mean, I think there's so much power in that. Like, it seems like there isn't, but there is a ton
There is.
because I am turning into something, reframing jealousy, insecurity, and turning it into something erotic and something that turns me on and something really titillating and also brings my partner closer to me, right? Yeah. It's we all have things. We
Hmm.
have the potential for things, but a lot of us have something that is like, is that normal? Is that okay? I feel like I'm the only one who does this or who wants this or who thinks about this. And it is so not true.
Right. If you can think of it, so has someone else.
Yeah,
If you can think of it, it's a thing.
totally. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sadly, a lot of people live in the shadows with those kinds of things. And because we don't normalize it, which, normalizing that type of thing might take some of the charge out of it, who knows? But just being able to like admit like that's yeah, that's what I enjoy, without the like, sort of reaction or, oh, there's something wrong with you or pathologizing these types of things is
Mhm.
I think very dangerous.
Yeah. 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 I love that. Beautiful. Um, okay. So, like, okay, so there's you guys were long distance for a really long time and now you're together. And I feel like there's this like I want to see you, I want to see you, I want to touch you, I want to touch you, I want to be with you, I want to be with you, I want to be with you. And now we're together. Now what? No.
The longing,
Uh-huh.
how much of
Yeah.
this was the longing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. It's so funny that you're talking about this because I'm listening to The Erotic Mind right now, and he's talking about that. And I do think for a lot of people, that's probably part of the erotic charge behind things. And I think back and I'm like, oh, I was asked some questions by some friends who are therapists, along the way, like kind of feeling like, yeah, but living together is going to be different. Like, how is that going to be? And I was like, what are you talking about? Kind of thing. And now I feel like, oh, that's what they meant. And I mean, I think I did have some concerns about that as well. But after the borders opened up, I was able to spend half the year in his country last year and live together.
Mhm.
And yeah, there was definitely like, what is this going to be like after not seeing each other for 28 months
Yeah.
um, in person? So yeah, it's not a concern for me. And I feel like our particular relationship style in terms of DS, we've only begun to explore that. And
Mm.
because of privacy situations at home and life and running a business and him running a business and just getting on our feet as a household, as a marital unit has its own challenges right now. And I keep thinking, oh God, the when we have the space, the energy, the time to like really explore, this is not that we're not doing it now, but it's like bits and pieces. And when there's more opening there, I think that issue, it's a non-issue
Yeah.
because we're both motivated to continue that and to work on that kind of thing and to really tap into some of the places that we haven't been yet.
I love that. And
Yeah,
I think that that's a really important, that's one of the advantages of non-monogamy for a lot of people is you can build in some of that longing, that desire that isn't there if you have the thing.
totally true. And that's
Yeah.
when they're out or, a weekend away with somebody,
Yeah.
you you build that in and then
Yeah.
it's like, I can't wait till they get back or like what is it going to be like, on my weekend or whatever it is. And yeah, I think that's part of it. That's very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
If
I'm
you need
c-
that, you can actually schedule that in, right? It's like
right?
go away on your own, even if it's not on a date. It could just be like a conference or whatever. And then the reunion. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm um I'm curious if what mm, what is the most like inappropriate or awkward or uncomfortable or intrusive thing people have said to you or asked you about your relationship?
Oh, gosh. I feel like in a way, like it's almost on me, like more because I am so open. I feel like sometimes I don't know like when I should have more of a filter. It's just sort of like letting out little bits of information and seeing like how they land with somebody. In terms of like inappropriate things, I would say not in terms of our relationship, although maybe, okay, here's one thing. Because part of our dynamic is not just him being out, it's also me. And the charge that he gets from that, I think someone did say to me once, well, he's a cuckold. And I was like, no, that's not it. Like, it's more like he's telling me to go do this thing. And yeah, there's a whole like deep conversation there. So I think there's that assumption can be one thing if I'm being slutty or, whatever. Um, the other thing is that I think it's pretty common when you're a sex positive and openly sexual female bodied person for, in particular, men to take that as an opportunity to escalate sexuality or sexual intimacy very quickly or
Mhm.
to make assumptions that are not appropriate or
Yeah.
wanted.
Mhm.
And that was a frustration for me in dating, particularly as like stating that I want to be submissive. I want to behave in submissive ways sexually. Oh my God. Like it was very tricky because that's what I knew was turning me on. But to talk about that just brought a lot of like negative experiences my way in terms of dating, not actual like intimate experiences because I had my guard up.
Yeah.
I really had to be very like intuitive, feel it in my body, like, do I trust this person? And like going from like, you know, a coffee date into like an intimate space, they were like wanting to accelerate that. And I'm like, no, you don't get it. Like, it's not an automatic thing. Like, you have to build the trust. And I think that was one thing for us that was really beneficial because we talked for 5 months before we
Mm,
met in person. So if we had been closer physically, we probably wouldn't have had that. So it really gave us opportunity to learn more about each other, really ask the questions that made sense and not escalate it into a sensual or sexual space until much further down the road. And I think that was really beneficial for us.
yeah. Yeah. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. While you were talking, it brought to mind for me, yeah, dating. Holy cow. How did you? So I have a lot of clients that are like, they open up their relationship, they start dating, and then they're like, oh my God, this is a nightmare. Why are all these dudes coming at me, like throwing their dick pics at me? And just assuming that because I am non-monogamous or whatever forward things they're putting on their profile or letting people know about, the like level of overstep and entitlement
Yeah, it's
is
just,
wild. Yeah, it's wild. Literally just having a podcast where I talk about sex has total strangers on the internet thinking that I want them. I'm like, no, I don't. If you're listening right now, no, I don't want you. Unless you're someone I've said I do want you. But talking about like checking your intuition, noticing your body, going with your listening to your instincts about people. What did that feel like? How did you know what that was? Because I think a lot of, especially people socialized as women, doubt their first instincts and they go, "Oh, they're probably just a nice guy and they're awkward or they're just saying some, like I'm misinterpreting it." Or
yeah,
yeah, the eye roll, right?
yeah. Well, yeah. And, you know, whew, there were there were negative experiences. I mean, I can look back now and be like, wait a second, like that was actually, I could call that an assault,
Mhm.
you know? And the recognition of that is like, that's deep. And it's painful. And a lot of people don't really want to think about those things. And I think in order to get stronger and to build boundaries, you kind of need to face those things. Um, Part of being a cuddle facilitator is a practice of boundaries and inquiry in terms of what you want, what you're looking for in the moment, and what you're willing to negotiate. And sadly, most of us have had those intuitive instincts overridden by
Yeah.
societal or parental familial pressures
Yeah.
of just like, oh no, you need to go hug so and so, or whatever, be
Yeah.
nice, or this and that. And then on top of that, like from my experience, like pleasing as part of my superpower as a submissive. But like, yes, and wait a second, like doesn't mean anything goes. And it doesn't mean like right away. So just like realizing like, okay, I think it's partially eroticizing the pleaser in me, but it's made me stronger in terms of like recognizing that I'm not willing to do everything and to put my own needs, desires, and boundaries to the side for the pleasure of somebody else. And that's been a journey. And, I'm in my 50s. This is hard work. This is a lot of undoing and, things that have the pressures that we have felt. Um, so yeah, I don't know.
Experience.
Yeah, experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of like, I don't know, I think there's a lot of education that needs to occur. And I I I wasn't expecting to keep talking about this, but cuddling is a really good practice for all identities, all people, all genders, all bodies. And platonic touch that's in a safe container is a really good way of um, working through some of these things.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I was thinking too, is I uh, would love to tell people, like, go find a facilitated cuddle party,
Mhm.
because you learn so much about how to navigate consent, ask for what you want, talk about what you don't want, in a, like, in a container that's held, that's facilitated, that's like has a structure to it, so that
Yeah,
you're not practicing this on your own in a situation where, if I say no and this person is upset, then I'm in danger, or I'm in a position where I might lose connection or love or security.
yeah.
It's such a great place to practice these tools, and then know what they feel like. Yeah.
And for people who have never experienced this and they're like, cuddling with strangers like feels like, oh my God, like I know. You also don't have to do it. That's
Uh-huh.
part of it.
Yeah.
Touch is not required.
Yeah.
You can have a conversation with somebody. You can sit in the corner and be by yourself. You can establish your own boundary and you can observe. And just to let people know that. And I
Yeah.
I love what you talked about in terms of safety. One of my favorite things that Dan Savage has said is that men are afraid of women laughing at them,
Mhm.
and women are afraid of men killing them. When it comes down to stating what we want or establishing a boundary, right?
Yeah.
And this is a biological reality over the history of human existence. It is not necessarily my personal experience to that degree, although I think there is some of that. But it lives somewhere in my human experience through our DNA. It's
Mm.
in there. The violence has occurred, since we've begun. And I think just recognizing that it's like, oh, because I have to be gentle with myself when after the fact, like, why did I allow that to happen? Well, there's a lot of
Wanted to
reasons.
stay alive.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
response is, that um fight, flight, fawn, all of it, it's like that's the soup,
Yep.
and we all react in different ways and combinations of ways. And just being gentle with yourself for not behaving in the way that uh, felt good um, is key. Like, don't beat yourself up over it. Just
Yeah.
try to learn and learn like what your response is.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Mm. Thank you.
Hmm.
Okay. I want to uh, okay, I have a segment that I
Yeah.
hold for support hold off for supporters of the show on our Patreon. It's patreon.com/not monogamous for people who want to hear it. It's
Yeah.
just the tip. I would love to hear
I love that.
your your favorite or best sex tip.
Oh, hmm.
I love that. I love that. Thank you.
Hmm.
So listeners, that was CJ's just the tip, and you can hear it at patreon.com/not monogamous. Yeah, this has been absolutely amazing. Where can people find you?
Thank you. So I'm a coach, and obviously I love working around this idea of shame. And my website is noshamewithcj.com. I'm
Mm,
also on Instagram currently under that same name. And, if any of this is of interest to you, like talking about something that's been on your mind, you're afraid to share it, please reach out. I do free discovery calls, and I'd love to work with you. And
mm,
if you have any kind of shame, there's a whole conversation around STIs that I'm working on. And,
excellent.
people hold a lot of shame around sexual trauma, STIs, all kinds of things. And I think the best way to move forward and eliminate that is by getting it off your chest, having someone who can hear you without judgment, and also exposing these things to sunlight.
Hmm.
It's not going to live the more that we expose it to sunlight in whatever comfortable way that is for you.
Yeah, I love that. Amazing. Thank
Hmm,
you so much. This has been just a wonderful conversation. I
thank
can't
you.
wait for people to hear it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.